that was a quick trailer for the pitch of the game I've been told in Sequence, the Songs of Eden. Sequence is a bit of a different game from what can be seen in the modern market right now. With different types of shooters being brought out endlessly, I decided to bring a different take on the shooter genre. Sequence is a survival horror crossed with an action first-person shooter, where it's more for experienced gamers. It's not going to be a cakewalk for most people. It's going to have a lot of action sequences and a lot of tough enemies, and that's what I'd like to incorporate into the game. For games like Dark Souls that have offered a lot of players a challenge to make them come back because it's difficult and it's a very hard game for them to play. Not something that they're going to be able to pass in 4 or 5 hours and never come back to. I'm hoping to bring it out onto the PC and the PS4, maybe the Xbox One, depending on platforms and the take to when it is on PC. So what is Sequence? Sequence is an action horror game based around 2 stories rather than just one main story that most games will focus around. These 2 stories are in the same world but stretched 20 years apart. It's an imaginative game world. It's crossed with Lovecraftian lore and Norse mythology. It's fully voice acted by a lot of talent. The player will take control of 2 characters separated by a 20-year gap, as I've just said. One will face the imminent destruction of mankind, and then 20 years later the other one is searching through the remnants of the destroyed Earth and made like great locations such as London, America, New York, Japan, Tokyo, Hong Kong, and so on. What makes this game different to most shooters is it's not just aim, fire, kill. It's cover based, third person, but when the player wants to they can easily switch between first person and third person. A lot of the mechanics within the game are based around making the player's experience exactly as unique as they want it to be. So every time someone different plays the game, you'll always be able to find a different way to play it. Within the game, I'm hoping to bring in the incorporation of things called augments. Now these allow the player to make further customizations to the characters. One character will be able to augment a fully suited mech, and the other one will augment their own body through future technology. The story is set it starts off in the year 2052, where the Earth, all the Earth's nations come together and lay down their arms and create the Earth Republic. Now the Earth Republic is supposed to be the world peace, unite the world's nations and end world crisis. However, they also have their own gains, much like a lot of like secret organisations and so on. And using this new technology called new technology called Paladins, they create mechs. Now mechs are only usable by certain people who have certain blood types and so on, and who are incompatible with this nexus. Now, in the year 2052, Mount Fuji erupts, and with it comes a deadly force that rips open a tear in reality and lets out a demonic wave of forces from another realm. Now these monsters are a Lovecraftian take on Norse mythology, such as the Fenrir wolf and the Midgard serpent, which will all make an appearance within the game. Now there's a lot of familiar faces for people who aren't familiar with Norse mythology, and there will be a lot of a lot of little hidden Easter eggs in there for people who have a greater knowledge of the Norse mythos. Now, the only people that can seem to fight these different monsters and save humanity are the paladins. The only technology the Earth has, and the only army the Earth has, is these paladins, this protective force. So the player will take control of John Adams, who is one of the first paladins and one of the most skilled soldiers out there in this army, and he's leading his own team. Now, the player takes control of him, customizing and creating their own mecha, going across different landscapes, saving people from London to Washington DC, embarking on multiple missions, especially and I'm hoping to incorporate a lot of user-based. They make their own decisions. The player just doesn't have to follow a storyline. They don't have to follow constant operations that are being sent to them by a computer. The player chooses what they do. They command their team and they tell them where to go and what to do next. Now, John Adams faces a very tragic story between betrayal and conspiracy within this organisation called the Earth Republic. And after a long battle that's called the Last War, Earth is abandoned. The last of humanity escapes to what they start to call Eden. Now, Eden is a floating city in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, where it's the last haven for humanity. And growing up on that island, 20 years later, is John Adams' son, William Adams. And William Adams is one of the first people to take on the role of Mark II Paladins. No longer do humans want to be controlling a machine, they want to be the machine themselves. And people begin to augment their own bodies. Soldiers are created who can turn themselves into immense weapons of destruction, and hoping to take back the Earth. But in an effort to create the first line of Mark II Paladins, many people die, and William Adams is one of the rejects. Basically, he can't cope with the augmentations. His body rejects it, and he's constantly supplied drugs to keep his body not to reject these false limbs and everything. He's no longer human in his own eyes, and he starts to resent his own being. The only thing that he seems to live up to is the legacy that his father was the great hero that saved humanity. And after being contacted by an anonymous source, he finds out that it's not all what he expects to be, and he learns of betrayal and the conspiracy that is now the Eden Republic, no longer the Earth Republic. So he embarks back to Earth, chased by the Mark II Paladins and his father's old commander. And there he experiences his own story that the player can take on alongside.
Okay, go on.
And he experiences his own story of tragedy and faces the monster in a completely different playstyle to the first part of the game. So this is to give players a completely unique experience. They can play it however they want and in what order they want. Because no matter what they'll do, it'll always leave questions behind, so the player will always come back to the other sequence. Thank you.
Okay, I do have a couple of questions. You've not mentioned anything about pricing structure. How much would you see this going for?
Since the game is going to be I'm hoping to make the game quite advanced. With a lot of the different technology we're going into it, and I want it to be quite graphical to make it feel as real as possible. So we are looking up there to be quite pricey with most of the high-end games nowadays. So you're looking at 50 to maybe 40 to 50 pound for the disc itself to create it, and we're looking quite a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say you're looking at major movie budget, possibly more. So that said, if we were going to invest 100 million, 200 million into this project, what's the one thing that you think will make this game sell?
It's different. It's nothing like any game out there right now. I don't think I've ever played a game that allows the player to completely play it how they want. A shooter has always been you're taking commands off an artificial intelligence. You do what you're told, you play the game for 4, maybe 5 hours, and it's done pretty much. Yeah, you go back to get collectibles, but it just doesn't feel like motivation afterwards. This game always allows the players to come back. The storylines link together, and if you do one thing in one game, it'll be there in the other. If you knock down a building in the first part, it'll be there 20 years later. Oh, it's always expanding, it's always different, and it's no matter how many times you play it, you're always going to have questions, and every time you play it, it's going to answer more questions, but it's going to leave you with more questions, and that's what I like in a game to be. Story. The story's got to captivate the player. It's going to make the player fall in love with the game, but it's also going to have good gameplay.
So you're talking about a huge replay factor. How roughly, how long would it take a player to complete the main storyline, presuming that they do things pretty well, not too many replays?
In a quite linear aspect, if they just stick to going to the main areas to do everything to proceed in the game, you're looking at about maybe 12 to 13 hours per game, because both of them are two separate games in their own
So
eyes.
it's 24, call it
About
24 hours.
yeah.
Cool. You've mentioned PEGI rating 18. Are you worried that you're excluding 60% of our mass market audience?
With the game, now look at a game like Dark Souls, it's not 15, it's not 16, it's an 18. Because it's graphic, it's gory, it's quite brutal, and it's got disturbing scenes. And this game will be the same. Look, if anybody who's familiar with Lovecraftian lore, it's not a children's story, it's quite gruesome, it's quite graphic, and not very nice monsters. Now, the 18 market, above 18s, it's still going to be quite a big market, because the game is, I believe it will sell, because the game is quite different, as I've said again. The under 18s market isn't the market I'm going for. You've still got intermediate gamers. I don't believe this game's going to be too easy. It's experience, and I've been experienced quite a few years now, really.
Okay. Thanks very much, Mr. Smith. We'll be in touch.
Okay.